like stopped before because I was like, no, I can't say cognac. I've already been read to filth for saying like cognac before. Like it's cognac. It's like the one French word that I do an American accent for because it's the only way I've heard it.
So is cognac the proper way to say it?
Cognac. Like, and it like the same kind of structure. It works in my brain for other things. Like I can say Armagnac. Like other like that's fine in my brain. But like I listen to too much hip hop. And so how much cognac? Oh my god, no.
How much cognac could a cone
could a cognac
contain? How much cognac could a cone contain?
Hey Gaz.
Hey Jay.
How much cognac do you think is sold in France, percentage wise? Just as a guess.
Like percentage sold in France as opposed to sold in other places?
Yeah, just in France, the country of France, how much cognac is sold roughly in percentages?
Okay, I'm gonna guess. God, this is gonna be such a bad guess. I'm gonna guess 40% of all cognac sold is sold in France.
It's actually less than 3%.
What?
2.7 to be exact.
Oh my god.
About half of all, it's okay. It's a wild stat. About half of all cognac is exported to the US, and Black Americans, who only make up 15% of the nation, drink half of that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Cognac's a big deal. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. I want to hear all about this.
So, in order to start talking about Black people's relationship with cognac, we have to go back to World War II and see what was going on with whiskey at that time. So, Britain enters World War II in like 1939. America follows a couple of years later. And both of those countries impose serious restrictions, taxes, things like that on whiskey production. And for people listening elsewhere, imagine the E in whiskey is surrounded by parentheses because I know what I'm talking about. Imagine that a Black person knows what they're talking about and just absorb that little fact.
Take in this reality, this new reality that's not actually new at all. You're in our house now.
Yeah.
You're on our phone line.
These distilleries were shuttered to produce things like ammunition or even penicillin. They were very well equipped to kind of transition into these kind of factories. And the companies that could keep making whiskey had to resort to making these kind of stronger, unaged, or maybe just not aged quite as long whiskey and then diluting it. And so it's really cheap and not great. And this is happening to bourbon and rye in America and even Scotch across the pond. Like,
not Scotch.
Even Scotch. World War II, bad. Very bad for a lot of reasons. Also bad for the whiskey industry. Like if for some reason you were running out of things to add to the cons column about World War II,
won't somebody think of the whiskeys?
Yeah, it was a hard time. I mean, even the Irish whiskey distilleries, because that's an even more complicated thing. Ireland was like newly independent and already dealing with a lot of this kind of being squeezed out of international trade by the British. So they were already suffering. And so these Irish distilleries were pretty much just closed or outright destroyed to the point that there were only 3 companies left at the end of the war.
Whoa.
Yeah. Canada was strangely primed for success. In the post-Prohibition American distilleries, they had to wait for their batches to age a little bit. But Canada had all of this stuff on lock, so they had kind of wormed into the American ecosystem. But by the 40s, they had kind of dialed into like that specific Canadian whiskey style, and Americans did not know what to do with that. It was like so different. They were like gross. So yeah, there's like just not a whole lot going on there. I will say with the Scotch, Macallan really likes talking about how they didn't let their Scotch production suffer during the war. So there wasn't no Scotch, but I think it's very funny that Macallan is like, in a time of great crisis, we did not stop making Scotch or letting the quality of our Scotch suffer, no matter what.
In unprecedented times, we did whatever we could to make sure that you could still get sloshed. We're heroes. And they kind of are.
Yeah, no matter what's going on in the world, we're going to make you some Scotch, okay?
Don't worry, we got it. We got you.
Yeah, so you basically have this still scarce and expensive Scotch, the rise of blended Scotch from some other companies, and that's fully in its kind of growing pains era, or this cheap, watered down American whiskey. So now you add to this equation all these black GIs deployed to France. Okay, France is still a colonial country. Like, I think every time I bring up France, I'm gonna be like, listen, there's good things about France, but also like it's on site for a lot of things.
Every time we talk about France, we're always like, "Have you heard of IT?
Have you heard of a blank check that needs to be written?"
Because we sure have. Anyway, back to our regular programming.
But yeah, France, especially at this time, generally treated Black people better relative to the U.S. Going back to World War One, some Black soldiers even stayed behind, and the ones who returned to the U.S. kind of spread this word of how welcoming the French were, and also about this delightful liquor called cognac. People knew about brandy, but cognac was generally kind of this after dinner drink thing for rich white men. So it wasn't really in the zeitgeist the way it is now.
I'm picturing someone drinking out of a very, 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 very tiny, but oh so delicate, elaborately carved little crystal glass.
We can get into snifters, but I can't get into them now because I have a lot of feelings and I already have like a different context detour than I want to go on. So just remember that I hate snifters, and we'll get back to it.
You're like, please, we can't afford to talk about that. We simply can't afford it.
We simply cannot. So with this kind of feeling of, Black Americans, so beloved in France, there's a lot of scholarship out there actually about the difference between being a Black American in France versus being like Black African or just from elsewhere across the diaspora, especially in the past like century or so. Because there's this curiosity about America coupled with this kind of intrigue and appreciation of Black American culture specifically that even to this day kind of marks Black Americans as a kind of model minority in France, like separate from other Black people in France. So yeah, there's like this latent colonial mindset that distances the French from Black people from literally anywhere else, especially ones that they probably had a direct or indirect hand in oppressing. And this notion that they're less civilized kind of persists, but France's relationship with the US like sprinkles a little razzle dazzle on Black Americans. Just a little razzle dazzle. You know how the French love a razzle dazzle.
A razzle and a dazzle. I'm very familiar.
You hear more and more about this with influencers traveling abroad, and there's this distinct American passport privilege. Like even as things have been on fire over here, being an American still carries a lot of cultural and bureaucratic weight. So I feel like this is like necessary context. Like, I don't want to just wax poetic about like the French love black people. Incorrect. The French love black Americans specifically, and it's complicated. Like, yeah, black Americans are like to France what Asians, like specifically, like I feel like East Asians are in America.
Yeah, this combination of model minorities slash like possible target for fetishization
Mm-hmm.
slash, well, you delivered us a lot of cool like soft power cultural products like music or foods that we find really cool and fascinating. So you're cool, I guess, but not any of those others.
Yeah, you can stay.
Don't bring your friends though.
No, no, no. They can't. Sorry. That last name has too many syllables. We don't like that here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actively. Back to the GIs. It's World War II. They're fighting Nazis. And when they wind down, they want to, try all of this like fancy French brandy and cognac they've heard so much about. And, they love it. I mean, cognac's delicious.
Yes, cognac is delicious. And also, what is it exactly?
So, great question. Cognac is a type of brandy that is made from white grapes. Basically, the grapes have to be made in the Cognac region. They're fermented into basically wine, white wine, and that wine is distilled twice and aged in oak barrels for at least 2 years. Then and only then can you call it cognac. Yeah, like people get mad about at the French for the regional stuff, like it's only champagne if it's from the Champagne region in France, but there's more rules. Like even, even what I just said was an oversimplification.
I was gonna say we've actually hit one of the, because it's become such a meme.
Mm-hmm.
It's become such a fun little smartass gremlin thing to say that actually it's only blank if it's from the blank region of France.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just sparkling, and it is very funny to be having a conversation where it's relevant. Where it's no. This is one of those. It has to come from cognac.
Yeah, it's very specific. It's this delicious new liquor, and these soldiers bring some cognac back with them. American whiskey, dire straits immediately post war, just waiting on things to age. And then what's out there is this like bad, cheap stuff that tended to stem from cheap, if not free, labor from Black people in the South. Also, a
Mm.
good amount of these companies, these whiskey companies, still had Confederate iconography on their bottles. Like, I
Oh
literally think we
God.
got the last Confederate flag off a bottle of whiskey, like, in the last few decades. Like, it's like it was post
Oh my
civil rights.
God.
Yeah, it's it's not great. I think Rebel Yell, I think it's Rebel Yell for a long time. Like, they had some kind of like, it's like a guy on a horse with like a Confederate flag, and they eventually got rid of it. Like,
Well, in the grand symbolic tradition of being a shitty, watered down version of a cultural export from Europe that is sprinkled with extra racism, yeah, American whiskey seems pretty on brand
yeah.
in that era.
Yeah, and so you're seeing all of this, but you've just been turned on to a smoother liquor, twice distilled, made by people who
Ooh,
don't totally
twice.
hate you. Like, that's pretty good market for the 1940s. That's pretty good marketing to Black people.
Yeah.
Uh,
It meets the bar
yeah,
of isn't vile and brewed with literal hate. We'll take it, baby.
yeah. So actually, in those immediate post-war years, 2/3 of the cognac imported to the States was consumed by just Black people.
Whoa.
So we've actually dialed it back. And at that point, we were only 10% of the population.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So at the same time, like Scotch starts infiltrating France and horns in on the luxury booze market. And Scotch is still going strong as of at least 2013. I believe French people drink as much Scotch a year as they export cognac. So, yeah. Yeah, Scotch is this weird looming figure in the background of like cognac history in general. Like there's a lot of beef there for sure.
Is there?
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Is it tied to like national identity, or is it just purely unrelated?
I'm sure it's a little bit of that, and I think it's just you're competing for space in a luxury market, and there's only so many other things that you can compete with. So you just kind of start going hard for each other's customers. I think it's very interesting that French people just don't really care about cognac, but it does make sense in a way because it's kind of not French. it's it's actually the cognac region has these like really lovely grapes that make this beautiful wine. And back in I think like the 16th century, around then, the Dutch were finally fed up of like trying to ship this wine like up north, and it's just like not surviving the trip. And so they're like, what if we distilled it? And that's actually how we start to get brandy. And then eventually like cognac becomes its own, like they figure out the double distillation thing, and then it's cognac, and then everyone's like, oh, this is great, and also like takes up less space on the ship, and it can travel long distances. And so from the get-go, cognac is like a huge international export. And so I think the French people just kind of feel like, it's not really ours, so we don't really fuck with it.
Whoa. So cognac is actually mostly kind of Dutch?
Kind of. And like actually a lot of there's three main houses right now. It's the Hennessy, Remy Martin, and Martell. There's other ones, but those are like the big three. And I believe those are all like I believe they're foreigners. I think Martell is actually was originally started by like a British guy from when like Britain kind of owned a little bit of France. This is the thing. You go far enough back in European history and people get their turf
Yeah.
wars and it's like the boundary just moved. like like he has a French ass name, that guy.
There's so many random little pockets of like land on the British that are just like bounced back and forth between those two countries
Yeah.
for a big chunk of history.
You guys are friends. You guys are related. Just calm down.
It's like you've spent the last who knows how many decades and centuries tossing the same few things back and forth over arbitrary lines. Let's chill.
Yeah.
Let's just relax.
Let's just calm down. So we have this situation going on, and I've mentioned now these big brands, but we really have to talk about Hennessy. But I'll have to do that after I get off the phone real quick, just because someone else needs to use the phone. So I will be back to talk about Hennessy.
Be back in a sec.
All right. Are you ready to get slizzard? Um,
You know I'm always ready to get slizzard. What do you mean? I was born ready to get slizzard. I live bereft every moment that I'm not getting slizzard. It's my one true calling. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. Well, let's talk Hennessy then. So it's worth going back a little bit. It's worth noting there were other waves of Black Americans kind of moving to France for a relatively better life, going back to like Louisiana Purchase days. So as early as 1896, you can see Hennessy's impact on Black communities in America. They put a lot of money into growing this relationship. In 1896, Hennessy co-founds the National Urban League, And then in 1909, it becomes the first corporate sponsor of the NAACP.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that sentence sparked so many intense questions for me so quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, there is kind of this feeling, there is kind of this presence of Hennessy and Cognac in the Black community already, but it is kind of leaning more towards Black people who are kind of like clawing their way into some version of middle class life and like being able to like attend college and things like that. It's a very kind of like Black excellence sort of partnership. And to this day, like they're very focused on Black entrepreneurship. Like that is it's
Whoa.
it's very like we will support you, but in like a capitalism way.
Yeah, it's peak capital. Like the idea of, first of all, did not know that the NAACP had corporate sponsors.
Oh yeah, like NASCAR, baby.
Got a quick couple of question marks about that. And also, hilarious for Cognac, of all things, to be one of the very first ones.
It's in the culture.
It's in the culture deep and really sliding in on that official drink of Black excellence TM kind of
Absolutely.
feeling. Like, whoa. I mean, gotta give it to them.
Yeah,
They found their target market and the branding is off the charts.
you can like follow this up throughout time. You know, there's the Thurgood Marshall College Fund where they set up like a $10 million fellowship. I think this is more modern to help young Black entrepreneurs. And they actually pretty routinely set up like 7 figures worth of resources in various pockets of the Black entrepreneurial space, like to this day.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's it's a big deal.
How do we feel about that?
We can get into it's
We can't
complicated.
get into it. It's complicated. It's complicated.
But let's go back to this post-war era. All of these cognac brands end up putting a lot of money into marketing to Black Americans, especially in magazines like Jet and Ebony. But it's really Hennessy that takes the lead. In 1945, Ebony's first year as a publication, Hennessy becomes the first spirit brand to advertise in their magazine. They're also the first to jet in 1953.
Wasting no time.
Yeah.
Again, like going hard on the target market.
They're like, "Oh, y'all have magazines over there now? You want you want money? We would also like
You want some
sales."
money?
So, yeah, and then you have like going back to this like French connection, you have entertainer and French resistance spy Josephine Baker, who becomes Hennessy's brand ambassador in the 50s.
Oh my, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wow. Mama Josephine.
she did a lot.
The original hot girl?
Actually, yes, 100%. Just fully full court, like just full entertainer, like absolute baddie, spy, influencer, brand ambassador.
Influencer.
And then she's also
baddie, spy, entertainer, influencer, and
she's also like kind of the original Angelina, like a Jolie. Like she adopts something like 8 kids from like different countries in the
Yeah.
course of her life. Like,
and then Lynn Whitfield played her in a movie.
mhm.
It's the ultimate peak. Once again, continues that no one slays harder than Josephine Baker.
Throughout time, this remains true.
Yeah. But it does start to feel like a mention any given historical moment of the 20th century and Josephine might pop up.
Yeah, she's there. She's working. She's cooking.
Why do we never play 6 Degrees of Josephine Baker as a society?
We really should do that more
Come on.
often. Yeah, especially like Black spaces from like the 20s to the 60s. It's like it's somehow across all of this space and time, it's somehow like a few hundred people who all knew each other. Like you really look into it and then it's like, oh, what's like Charlie Parker doing in Florida with like it's like why are these people meeting all of a sudden?
Well, you got to keep in mind populations were smaller back then.
Mm-hmm.
So there were only like These are rough ballpark numbers. I'm not pretending to be an expert or a statistician, but I'd say 100 people total in the world. So,
You get a handful of black people, and it's like, hey, we should do
yeah.
something like creatively, but also about our oppression. Um, and then they did. Speaking of which, during the U.S. Civil Rights Movement in 1963, Hennessy brings on this Olympian, Herb Douglas. He won a bronze medal for something in 1942. You know, who knows? Who knows? Are there records? Sure. Is that worth me diving into microfiche for? Probably not. He was an Olympian. Okay.
We're not the Olympian podcast. Check in next season.
Yeah, things might
We won't
change.
be. Yeah.
It just goes full Olympian podcasting. But yeah, he actually ends up being with the company for over 30 years and serves as
Whoa.
vice president of urban market development. So yeah, from the 60s through the 90s, this guy is at the helm. All of this is happening in the 50s and 60s. And, the Black American market is also basically buoying cognac from being totally taken out by Scotch.
I was going to say, if there's such a huge percentage of the overall consumption, they are the foundation of the entire industry.
Mm-hmm. It's such a huge deal. You also, I will say, in the 60s, cognac starts to really take off in China and other East Asian countries. That is a whole other like the Asian relationship to cognac is different and more complicated. And that I feel like I've been teasing this for a long time on the internet, but every time I learn a new thing about that, I'm just like, I am the wrong person to talk about this.
It's like with each new piece of knowledge you technically gain, it is even more clear that it is far outside your pay grade.
Yeah.
And, cultural positioning to talk about. Like, somebody's going to have a lot to get into with that, but it won't be me.
Maybe in the show notes, I'll put an exploratory study into the show notes. And if you really want to know, this can be the thread that you start pulling. Okay.
Yeah. If you're trying to go down the rabbit hole on the relationship between East Asian consumers and high-end cognac brands, have at it, kid. Go for it, sport. We believe in you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have this period of time where Black people are really, keeping cognac afloat. So by the 80s, Scotch is also making a splash in the US. Scotch is coming for cognac's throat. Like, they're not letting up. And, cognac's having a hard time seeming cool to non-Black people. It's that thing, you're thinking of stuffy white people with snifters. It's like gross. Like, that's not cool. It's this time of like coolness and like.
I don't want to feel like a person sitting on an old musty chair in a waistcoat, struggling to get the cognac through my giant handlebar soup strainer mustache.
Yeah. Okay. This is the time where I'll talk about snifters.
Yes.
I hate snifters. Stop using snifters. They are from a different time. So a snifter is like this bulbous glass, like very short stem, but it is technically stemmed glassware. And, you'll see people often like holding it with their palm under the bowl of the glass. And, they swirl it around and like sniff the cognac or whatever is in there, because you can put different things, but generally it's brandy or cognac in a snifter. So that is bad. All of it's bad. That practice came from a time when, room temperature was also a bit cooler. So the original snifter glass where you're holding it and your hand is warming it up, that was necessary to kind of get more of the aromas out. Like it was a part of the process to make the cognac more enjoyable. But climate change.
Oh.
And
Climate change has entered the chat, y'all. Ew, sorry.
genuinely, no matter how old you are, I think even like I feel like every 15 to 20 years, you should reassess any sort of alcohol drinkware that you have because people are constantly coming out with new form factors that better suit the times and like the kind of drinks or wines and, other alcohols that we're making. So, like, just reset what you're doing. Now, what you try to drink cognac out of, or if you're doing any sort of sipping expensive alcohol, is a tulip glass, just like a small stemmed glass that has like honestly like a little bit of like, well, yeah, it's a tulip shape. It looks like a tulip. I was like gonna over explain it, but it's like round at the bottom, goes in, and then it kind of like fluted top. And that allows you to get some aromas without having that snifter thing of like, would you like 40% ABV coming straight at your nostrils right now? It's a snifter is a bad experience. Like to spend that much money on cognac or something like that and then put it in a snifter, you're throwing away money.
Throwing away money and just performing a little bit of self hate. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay, I'm so glad you explained what a tulip glass is because I actually come from a family of tulip haters and was never allowed to see one as a child.
Oh my God.
It's a tragic part of my backstory that I've never shared with anyone before, but you are getting the exclusive tea.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, like between what the Dutch did with tulips, like maybe your family was onto something. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe tulips are just secretly the instrument of everything bad in the world.
yeah, it's the Dutch. The Dutch are the bad instrument for everything. It's like, hey, would you like the stock market and slavery, chattel slavery? Is it something everyone would like? It's like, no, not
And,
everyone.
and they said, "What's that? No, you got it. Here you go.
We'll just do
Money,
we'll just do
please."
this for a few hundred years. Is that cool with everybody? Is that cool?
Too late. We're doing it.
So yeah, white people, snifters, bad image outside of the black community. But it's the 80s. So hip hop happens. And all of these like big hip hop names, especially as it starts to cross over and get bigger and bigger, they make cognac cool and sexy and young again. Early mentions tend to reference Hennessy because it's so baked into the culture. And, you also have some references to Remy Martin, but the big push kind of comes later on with Busta Rhymes and Boo Puff Daddy. Uh,
Boo.
they're past the Courvoisier. That song, it just goes so big and wide, and it expanded the consumer knowledge base of what brands could be. They're like, oh, Courvoisier, like I've never even heard of that kind of cognac. And like people start exploring a little bit more. But yeah, they basically get like 30 years of just all of these different brands get like 30 years of just often free, and then eventually they become brand ambassadors, but often free advertising in these rap and hip hop songs, and even like in the music videos. That for sure is product placement. But I imagine that a lot of people will put a brand into a song just to get product placement for the video at this point.
I think it's equal parts. Maybe they'll sponsor us. And I need something with 3 syllables that ends with the A sound. What do we got? What do we got?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to rhyme with something French. It always feels bougie.
It's good for the meter. It really is. It comes in clutch.
You have this happening, but in more recent years, people have been kind of shying away from these big brands, especially as people start to kind of think more critically about their involvement in the Black community. Some people, start their own brands like Jay Z's Douce. And the big thing, actually, like Scotch isn't horning in anymore. A lot of rap and hip hop artists are moving into the tequila space. So that's really popping off. And this is also combined with just the pandemic kind of off ramping from staying at home. Like staying at home and having extra money, people bought pricier alcohols and things like that. But now with inflation and all of this stuff, like actually, I believe sales and exports of cognac have been going down. I want to say it was something like 20% last year.
Whoa.
Yeah, just overall in the world. Not sure specifically the US, but as luxury brands, that's what's been happening. And that's partially why like Hennessy has been pushing their younger cognacs on people. Like everyone's pushing like the cheapest ones to just try to like move product. But yeah, you also have Cuervo from Migos, who famously told his fans that Hennessy doesn't really fuck with black people. so, so yeah, the relationship has been souring in recent years. And it's been interesting. I think Martell seems to be picking up Hennessy's slack. Like it seems like they're really being embraced in a new and interesting way. And listen, they're not a sponsor, but this is a Martell household, so
Well, Martell,
a little bias.
talk to us. Talk to us. I got ideas. I think you should create an artist persona under the name Martell, put out a few banger tracks, and then let people find out that
Yes.
you're just a brand of cognac. And just, keep it going for not too long, like 9 years. Just put out a few albums.
just a record deal for just a,
Actually start a whole new music genre. Reinvigorate the scene.
yeah.
And then you're golden, you're solid. Feel free to zell me for that idea. Happy to give that to you. And Martell rhymes with a lot of things.
It does.
I'm just saying.
It does.
Martell in the hotel. If you're unwell, call up a cell. Listen.
Listen. This is too much for free.
Okay, yeah. Roll that back. Unhear that. We're putting that behind the paywall.
That's kind of the general overview. I think I really just want to wrap up with just kind of shedding some light on the different cognac types. Because I think if you're new to cognac, you like go to that aisle. It's probably behind glass or locked up because racism. And you go to that aisle and you see all these letters and you're like, what does this mean? Unlike scotch or like other whiskeys, cognac producers aren't allowed to put the exact years aged on the bottle. So they have all these different categories. So you'll start with VS, which is very special. And sometimes this can just be something that has stars on it, like 3 to 5 stars. And those stars are, I believe, originally celebrated for, it's like, a sighting of Halley's Comet during like a good year or something like, or, it's just showing how long it's been aged. I think it's generally 3 stars, but it's aged for 2 to 3 years. This has been a wonky thing to figure out because there's also maybe like a half year thing happening. But yeah, cognac, and another important thing about cognac is that it's generally a blend of things, and blend has bad connotations, but this is a very meticulous process. So a VS, a very special cognac, the youngest like type of cognac in that batch has to have been aged at least 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's generally how it works. It's like the frameworks I'm going to explain. It's like the youngest one they use is taking from that year. So yeah, then you have VSOP, which is generally very superior old pale.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I think there's like a translation situation going on.
There better be. There better fucking be. God damn.
Yeah, that's what's generally used nowadays, and that's going to be 4 to 5 years that it's aged. That and you can also call that one reserve or VO, just very old. um, but more often than not, it's VSOP these days. So there's that.
VSOP, also a great rap song name.
Yes.
Just saying.
uh,
Giving y'all free game.
So yeah, the VS and the VSOP, those are official classifications. The next one I'm going to talk about is Napoleon, which is not official. It's technically in the VSOP kind of umbrella, and that those usually need at least 6 years. So that's how that works. And the reason there's a Napoleon one is like Napoleon was really into brandy and cognac to the point where even when he was exiled, he left with just crates of the stuff. so, so
On brand, but I also would have believed you if you had said, yeah, because one time they locked Napoleon in a little like wood barrel slat type shed and just let him kind of ferment in there for a couple years. And I'd be like, yeah, yeah, sounds correct. Makes sense. He must have come out very pungent and delicious. I don't know. But no, being a cognac fan makes more sense.
yes. So okay. So now we're getting into XO. Just one XO, no Gossip Girl. This is
Aw.
I know. It's extra old.
Bye. Done. They're not even trying with this one. They're not even trying anymore.
This actually used to be more closer to the Napoleon age, where it was like 6 to 7 years. But in 2018, they changed it where it's at least 10 years because most of the exos out there were starting at like 15 anyway. So they're just like, let's just bump this up like this, like expand the other category and like make this a little bit more exclusive. And then there's an XXO or the extra extra olds.
Oh no! Oh no, there's more.
There's more. This is 14 years. And then there's an hordage, which
How do you say it? How do you pronounce it?
hordage, like
Hordage.
yeah, like think hors d'oeuvres, but it's like dage, like it's
Hordage.
yes, it's like of
Okay.
an old age, and that's part like nodding to this thing of like you can't really put the years on it unless it's there. Sometimes there are like special vintages and like you can be allowed to put that year on it, but yeah, these are very old. These are so
Unquantifiable. I love the idea of talking about this as if they're the way you talk about. I love the idea of talking about these drinks the way you talk about a woman of a certain age.
yes.
We dare not quantify, just know that it's good.
Hordage. It's yeah, this is hordage. It's like mm, generally 25 to 30 years. I think more and more it's like 30 plus years, but often when you're talking about like an hordage, like it's maybe 50 plus years, could be 100 plus years. Like these are very expensive bottles, mostly speaking. But again, you can have something that's on the lower side because the hordage isn't one of the official classifications. So sometimes people will just put that on something and it's only been aged like 7 years. But generally speaking, people are pretty just like strict about self policing and it's at least 25 years or older.
Whoa.
So yeah, the official like classifications are VS, VSOP, XO, and XXO. And then, all the other things, Napoleon or Dodge, even the vintages, like they're just kind of loosely adhered to. But yeah, now you know what all those letters mean on the cognac that's being kept from you at your local liquor store behind lock and key.
I do kind of love the idea, though, of just having, like, why don't we do that for people? Just get rid of granular age tiers and let's just all start wearing shirts that say XO, XXO, and just leave it to other people to guess, figure it out. Move accordingly, get comfortable with the mystery.
I would just preemptively be like, Orndage. It's like, you can't even, I'm of an age. Who knows?
You don't need to know.
Who knows how old I am? I'm as old as time herself.
Just know that no one is older than I am or richer. No, I'm at my peak, baby. Don't worry about it. I don't even know how old I am. It's all good.
Yeah, I think we've definitely been touching on this kind of central point of, what is the black market worth to certain producers, and how does that impact how we engage with alcohol overall, and like not just in America, but all across the diaspora. But that's a really big topic, so we might have to save it for next time.
Yeah, that's a bit of a chunker. That's a that's a hefty one to get into.
Yeah, it's a thinker. I'll ruminate a little more.
But I love hearing about the history of cognac with Black Americans specifically. I had no idea about so much of this stuff. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's truly such an interesting thread of a relationship that goes even deeper to France's relationship with Black people, Black Americans in particular. Yeah, history is rich and full of context, and that's what we give you here at All Mixed Up.
And really, we also give you a little bit of the history of cool, right? Just a little sip about what makes something hot and not.
Yeah.
Including literal climate change.
Yes.
Or snifters.
Literal climate change will change your glassware.
That'll keep you hot, baby.
It's perfect. That's the last line of the episode. Goodbye. Bye. All Mixed Up is a mixed media podcast hosted by Jay Fergus and Kasimope Udo Okoye. You can support our podcast on Substack and follow Jay's cocktail shenanigans at Cheers Mix J on all platforms. That's Cheers MXJ. This podcast is edited by Lindsay Zana, and our theme song is courtesy of Chris Bell. Special thanks go out to Michael Escanuelas, Jill Petrocic, and Austin Rusk. Thanks for listening, and remember to clink responsibly. Cheers.